Happiness is being satisfied with what you have. Success comes from dissatisfaction. Is success worth it then?
Oof. I'm not sure that statement is true anymore. Like, I made that statement a long time ago. And a lot of these things are just notes to myself, and they're highly contextual. They come in the moment, they leave in the moment. Happiness, okay, so very complicated topic, but I always like the Socrates story where he goes into the marketplace and they show him all these luxuries and fineries, and he says, how many things there are in this world that I do not want, right? And that's a form of freedom. So not wanting something is as good as having it. In the old story with Alexander Dionysius, right? Alexander goes out and conquers the world, and he meets Dionysius who's living in a barrel, and Dionysius says, get out of the way, you're blocking my sun. And Alexander says, oh, how I wish I, could be like Dionysius in the next life. And Dionysius says, that's the difference. I don't wish that I could, sorry, Diogenes. Diogenes says, I don't wish to be Alexander. So two paths to happiness, and one path is to success. You get what you want, you satisfy your material needs, or like Diogenes, you just don't want it in the first place. And I'm not sure which one is more valid. And it also depends what you define as success. If the end goal is happiness, then why not cut to the chase and just go straight for it? Does being happy make you less successful? That is a conventional wisdom. That may even be the practical earned experience of your reality. You find that when you're happy, you don't want anything, so you don't get up and do anything. On the other hand, you still got to do something. You're an animal. You're here to survive. You're here to replicate. You're driven. You're motivated. You're going to do something. You're not just going to sit there all day. Unlikely. Some people do. Maybe it's in their nature. But I think most people still want to act. They want to live in the arena. I've found for myself, as I've become, happier is a big word, but more peaceful, more calm, more present, more satisfied with what I have. I still want to do things. I just want to do bigger things. I want to do things that are more pure, more aligned with what I think needs to be done and what I can uniquely do. So in that sense, I think that being happier can actually make you more successful, but your definition of success will likely change along the way.
Is that a realization you think you could have gotten to had you have not had some success in the first place?
At least for me, I always wanted to take the path of material success first. I was not going to go be an ascetic and sit there and renounce everything. That just seems too unrealistic and too painful. In the story of Buddha, he starts out as a prince, and then he sees that it's all kind of meaningless because you're still going to get old and die, and then he goes into the woods looking for something more. I'll take the happy route that involves material success. Thank you.
I think it's quicker. In some ways, one of your insights is it's far easier to achieve our material desires than it is to renounce them. And
it depends on the person, but I think you have to try that path. If you want something, go get it. Like I quip that the reason to win the game is to be free of it. So you play the games, you win the games, and then hopefully you get bored of the games. You don't want to just keep looping on the same game over and over, although a lot of these games are very enticing and have many levels and are relatively open-ended. And then you become free of the game in a sense that you're no longer trying to win it. You know you can win it. And either you move to a different game or you play the game for the sheer joy of it.
Yeah, another one of yours, most of the gains in life come from suffering in the short term so you can get paid in the long term. I think
that's classic.
Winning the marshmallow test on a daily basis. But there's an interesting challenge where I think people need to avoid becoming a suffering addict, sort of using suffering as the proxy for progress as opposed to the outcome of the suffering, right? It's like, I was in pain not eating the marshmallow. I was in pain doing this work. I have attached well-being and satisfaction to pain, not to what the pain gets me on the other side of it.
If you define pain as physical pain, then it's a real thing. It happens and you can't ignore it. But that's not what we mean by suffering. Suffering is mostly mental anguish and mental pain. And it just means you don't want to do the task at hand. If you were fine doing the task at hand, then you wouldn't be suffering. And then the question is, what's more effective, to suffer along the way or just to interpret it in a way that is not suffering? You hear from a lot of successful people, they look back and they say, oh, the journey was the fun part, right? That was actually the entertaining part and I should have enjoyed it more. It's a common regret. There's a little thought exercise I like to do, which is you can go back into your own life and try to put yourself in the exact position you were in 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, and you try to remember, okay, who was I with? What was I doing? What was I feeling? What were my emotions? What were my objectives? And really, really try to transport yourself back and see if there's any advice you'd give yourself, anything you'd do differently. Now, you don't have new information. Don't pretend you could have gone back and, bought a stock or bought Bitcoin or whatever. But just knowing what you know now in terms of your temperament and a little bit of age-related experience, how would you have done things differently? And I think it's a worthwhile exercise to do. So don't let me rob you of the conclusion. But I'll tell you, for me, uh, I would have done everything the same, except I would have done it with less anger, less emotion, less internal suffering, because that was optional. It wasn't necessary. And I would argue that someone who can do the job at least peacefully, but maybe happily, is going to be more effective than someone who has unnecessary emotional turmoil.
Well, you end up with a series of miserable successes, right? The outcome may have been the same, but the entire experience of getting there.
And the journey is not only the reward, the journey is the only thing there is. Even success, it's human nature to bank it very, very quickly, right? Because the normal loop that we run through is you sit around, you're bored, then you want something. Then when you want something, you decide you're not going to be happy until you get that thing. Then you start your bout of suffering or anticipation while you strive to get that thing. If you get that thing, then you get used to it. And then you get bored again. Then a few months later, you want something else. And if you don't get it, then you're unhappy for a bit. And then you get over it, and then you want something else, right? That's the normal cycle. So whether you're happy or unhappy at the end, it tends not to last. Now, I don't want to be glib and say that, oh, there's no point in making money or being successful. There absolutely is. Money solves all your money problems. So it is good to have money. That said, there are those stories. I don't know if you've seen those studies. I don't know how real these are. A lot of these psych studies don't replicate, but it's a fun little study that shows that people who break their back and people who win the lottery are back to their baseline happiness 2 years later.
Yep.
Again, I don't know if that's entirely true. I think money can buy you happiness if you earned it, because then along the way, you have both pride and confidence in yourself, and you have a sense of accomplishment, and you set out to do something and you were right. So I'll bet that lingers. And then, as I said, money solves your money problem. So I don't want to be too glib about it, but I would say in general, this loop that we run through of desire, dopamine, fulfillment, unfulfillment, like you have to enjoy the journey. The journey is all there is, right? 99% of your time is spent on the journey. So what kind of a journey is it if you're not going to enjoy it?
How do you shortcut that desire contract?
You could focus. You could decide that I don't want most things. I think we have a lot of unnecessary desires that we just pick up everywhere. We have opinions on everything, judgments on everything. So I think just knowing that those are the source of unhappiness will make you be choosy about your desires. And frankly, if you want to be successful, you have to be choosy about your desires. You have to focus.
You can't be great at everything.
You can't be great at everything. You're just going to waste your energy and waste your time.
Is fame a worthwhile goal?
It gets you invited to better parties. Gets you into better restaurants. Fame. So fame is this funny thing where a lot of people know you, but you don't know them. And it does get you put on a pedestal. It can get you what you want at a distance. So I wouldn't say it's worthless. Obviously, people want it for a reason. It's high status, so it attracts the opposite sex, especially for men, it attracts women. That said, it is high cost. It means you have no privacy. You do have weirdos and lunatics. You do get hit up a lot for weird things. And you're on a stage, so you're forced to perform. So you're forced to be consistent with your past proclamations and actions, and you're going to have haters and all that nonsense. But the fact that we do it, the fact that we all seem to want it, means that it would be disingenuous to say, oh, no, I'm famous, but you don't want to be famous. That said, I think fame, like anything else, is best produced or pursued as a byproduct of something potentially more worthwhile. Wanting to be famous and craving to be famous and being famous for being famous, these are sort of traps.
Fame for fame's sake.
Yeah, exactly. So it's better that it's earned fame. So, for example, earn respect in the tribe is you do things that are good for the tribe. Who are the most famous people in human history? They're there are people who sort of transcended the self, the Buddhas and the Jesuses and the Muhammads of the world. Who else is famous? The artists are famous. Art lasts for a long time. The scientists are famous. They discover things. The conquerors are famous, presumably because they conquered for their tribe. There was someone that they were fighting for. So generally, the higher up you rise by doing things for greater and greater groups of people, even though it may be considered tyrannical or negative, like, Genghis Khan is famous, but to the Mongols, he was doing good. To the rest of them, not so much. Uh, the higher level you're operating at, the more people you're taking care of, the more you sort of earn respect and fame. And I think those are good reasons to be famous. If fame is empty, if you're famous just because your name showed up in a lot of places or your face showed up in a lot of places, then that's a hollow fame. And I think deep down you will know that. And so it'll be fragile and you'll always be afraid of losing it. And then you'll be forced to perform. Mm-hmm. So the kind of fame that pure actors and celebrities have, I wouldn't want. But the kind of fame that's earned because you did something useful, why dodge that? No, you can't.
There's a challenge, I think, especially if people make very loud public proclamations about things. You mentioned there about you're almost a hostage to the things that you used to say, that being able to update your opinions and change your mind looks very similar to the internet as hypocrisy does. No, the difference between me saying something in the past and saying something different now is perhaps I've learned, perhaps I've updated my beliefs, right. But so few people do it in a legitimate way. I think that the grifter shill, you see, this is the smoking gun that shows that he didn't really believe that thing all along. Right. And I went to a retreat in LA a couple of years ago, and there was a guy that I used to follow, that a big business and productivity advice content creator, really, really successful. And he just totally stepped back from everything and went like monk mode and focused on his business. I asked him why, and he said, I started feeling like I had to live up to in private the things that I was saying in public.
Right. Yeah, it's a what was it that who said it? Was it Mencken that foolish consistency is a hobgoblin of little minds, right? But essentially, look, all learning is error correction, right? Every knowledge creation system works through correcting errors, making guesses and correcting errors. So by definition, if you're learning, you're going to be wrong most of the time, and you'll be updating your priors. And so, for example, I did this Joe Rogan podcast, I don't know, it's like 8 or 9 years ago. And people will call out like the one thing that didn't turn out to be correct, right? And it's just like, and they just beat on it because it helps them in their mind raise their status a little bit. Aha, I caught him in an error. Well, I think if you catch someone in a blatant lie where they believe one thing and they say another, that's legit. That's a character flaw. They shouldn't be lying. But on the other hand, if they just made a guess at something and they got it wrong, and by the way, mostly it's about the AI AGI thing, and I think I'm still right about that, but it's a different story. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. People who think we have achieved AGI just fail a Turing test from their side. But it's funny how people latch on to single proclamations. But the reality is all of us are dynamical systems. We're always changing. We're always learning. We're always growing. And hopefully we're correcting errors. What you don't want to be doing is lying in public because you're trying to look good. And I think people can smell that. What this world really lacks right now is authenticity. And because everybody wants something, they want to be seen as something, they want to be something that they're not. And so you do catch a lot of people saying things that they don't really believe. And I think people are very sensitive to that.
Bullshit radars have become hypersensitized to try and work out whether or not this person means the thing that they're saying.